Baik, sekarang ini live streamingnya sudah berjalan dan sebentar lagi kita akan admit semua peserta yang sudah menunggu di waiting room.
Oke, copy. Error. Okay, we will wait for like 1 minute to admit all of the participants to join our meeting. Okay, it's 6 minutes past 30, so I think we'll start. And everyone is already joined. No one is in the waiting room. So everyone, welcome to our webinar. This is one of the series events of ASEAN Student Summit. And in this webinar, we will talk about green economy. And my name is Raihan, and I will be the host for today's event. And before we start the webinar, I'll mention two things. First, this webinar will be recorded. So if you don't want yourself to be recorded, just shut your camera and don't unmute yourself. And then this event also will be live streamed at YouTube. Okay. Okay, so that's the regulatory issue, and we're clear on that. So let's get started. So as we know, green economy has been on the rise for this decades. Everyone talks about it. And this is also something that we want to discuss with all of the ASEAN students about the implementation, not just the idea, but also the implementation of the green economy in our respective country. And this webinar serves as an introduction to the topic so that we have the same level of basic understanding about what green economy is, with the hope that we can discuss it further in our main events in 1st July in Frankfurt, where we held the offline events with wonderful speakers and talk about green economy further. So today we have two esteemed experts that will talk about green economy in ASEAN from an ASEAN perspective, and also the introduction about the green economy. So the rundown for today is as follows. First, we will have an opening remarks from the Vice President of Indonesian Student Association, or we call it PPI, Germany. And then a little bit explanation about our main event on the 1st July. And then we go into the main event of today, which is the talks. and then followed by Q&A. And after the main event, we will have a little bit quiz where you will have the chance to get special prize from us. And at the end, we will open a networking session in a virtual, let's say, virtual workspace, metaverse, Steve Watt. Okay, so without further ado, let's go with the first agenda of the day. And before the vice president of the PPI Germany explain about what PPI Germany is and so on, I'll talk a little bit. So the Indonesian Students Association in Germany, or die Vereinigung Indonesischer Studenten, was formed in Bad Godesberg, Germany on May 4th, 1956, and registered as a legal entity in Bonn in 1963. The student organization, later known as PPI Germany, has become the center of cultural integration of the Indonesian community in Germany. Indonesian Student Association in Germany is a non-partisan political, scientific, social, and independent organization. And since then, we have a total of 30 branches across Germany. With more than 10,000 students living in various cities, Germany has the highest number of Indonesian students among other European countries. So without further ado, Agnia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raihan, for the introductions. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings and good afternoon to all the speakers and the participants. Hello, everyone. My name is Agnia. As the Vice President of PPI Jerman, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and fellow participants gathered here today. It is an honor to have you all join us for this significant webinar on the topic of green economy. I would like to take this opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to our speakers, Ananda Putri, environmental policy practitioners, and Mahawira Dilan, energy policy analyst. Thank you. Your expertise and contributions have had a profound impact on sustainable development. And today we eagerly anticipate gaining insights from your presentation and learning about your experiences in promoting the green economy. When discussing the green economy, it is crucial to consider the perspective of ASEAN. ASEAN represents a diverse region comprising 10 member countries, each with its own unique challenges, opportunities, and development priorities. ASEAN countries, with their rapidly growing populations and emerging economies, face numerous environmental challenges, including deforestation, pollution, and climate change. However, they also possess significant potential for sustainable development, renewable energy, and green innovation. In this context, international collaborations, knowledge sharing, and capacity building become crucial in fostering a collective approach towards the green economy. Platforms like this webinar provide us with an opportunity to learn from experts and practitioners, exchange best practices, and explore innovative solutions that can be adapted to the unique needs and circumstances of ASEAN nations. Through organizations like PPI Jerman, we strive to bring together Southeast Asian students studying abroad, facilitating collaborations and knowledge sharing between Germany and ASEAN. By leveraging the expertise and experiences gained in Germany, we aim to contribute to the development of sustainable practices, policies, and green innovations in ASEAN nations. By engaging with our esteemed speakers, we can delve into the intricacies of sustainable development, green economy, and environmental preservation in the ASEAN context. I invite all the participants to actively engage in the discussions, share their experiences, and propose innovative ideas for advancing the green economy in ASEAN. Let us embrace this opportunity to foster collaboration and knowledge exchange, working together towards a sustainable and prosperous future for our region. Thank you once again to our distinguished speakers and to all of you for being part of this important webinar. Let us make the most of this platform to explore the potential of the green economy from ASEAN's perspective and forge partnerships that drive sustainable development in our region. Thank you very much for the attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have fun.
Thank you, Agnia, for the remark. And for the next event, like I said before, this webinar serves as an introduction to our main event, which is the ASEAN Student Summit. So now I have my friend that will also explain a little bit what we are going to do in our main event and why this webinar is one of the key for our discussion on the 1st July. Ananda, please, the floor is yours.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ananda, and currently I'm representing from the ASEAN Student Summit, which also gonna be one of the biggest Southeast Asian Student Summit in Germany, held by PPI Germany and a couple of collaboration with other Southeast Asian organizations. So as you all probably have known about the Southeast Asian Student Summit, it's gonna be our second year to do it again on this 2023 years, and also the summit is gonna be held on the 1st of July 2023 in the Goethe University of Frankfurt, where we're going to cover a lot of interesting sessions from seminar, focus group discussion, and also diplomacy talk. So we will also give you like other intercultural performance from our Southeast Asian student friends. So that's why on this summit, we will meet like a lot of Southeast Asian students, and we will meet them, exchange knowledge with them about our interculturals. And also the big theme that we're going to cover today on the summit and today's webinar is the green economy. So come and register to the link that I'm going to give you on the chat box, or follow our Instagram at ASEAN Student Summit for further information. So I guess that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and I really hope I will see you next week on the summit. Thank you, Raihan, for
Okay. Thank you, Ananda, and that's why we encourage you all that participate in today's webinar to also join us on the main event. It will be in Frankfurt, in Goethe University, and it will be a lot of fun. Yeah. So, okay, before we go into the main event, which is the talks, I have several questions for you guys so that we know what we need actually from the talks. So I will send the link in the chat about the, so we use Mentimeter. For some of you, maybe that's familiar. Okay, link is on the chat, and please join and give your opinion on the Mentimeter. So I think it'll take like 2 minutes, and after that we will go into the main event, which is the talk. And the main event will be led by my friends, Chaska, and he will also introduce our speakers today.
So, hello everyone. I am Chaska Oscario. I'm currently, I'm going to be your moderator for the preceding talks that we're going to have, and hopefully engage in a fruitful discussion, and of course, learn a lot more about the green economy from our distinguished guests that have joined us here at this great time. So before we soldier on to the main topics, it would be nice to get to know more about the backgrounds, and of course, to know our speakers better. So starting off, for our first speaker, Ms. Ananda Putri is an environmental policy practitioner who has been working mostly on climate and land use topics. She holds a master's degree in public management, majoring in geogovernance from the University of Potsdam in the state of Brandenburg, and also a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering from Universitas Indonesia, and is currently the senior coordinator for the Accountability Framework Initiative, or the AFI, in Southeast Asia. And she currently, through this role, she supports the forestry and agricultural supply chain actors in creating continuous improvement to reduce and prevent deforestation, conversion of natural ecosystems, and also to alleviate violation of human rights. So yes, and a little bit about our second speaker that we have later on. We're going to have Mahavira Singh Dillon to speak to us also about the green economy. And he is an energy policy analyst who has led and managed a number of research and development programs covering the clean and renewable energy sector. So later on, we're going to focus more on that. And he also focuses a lot on renewable energy technology adoption, as well as greenhouse gas modeling and scenario exercise. A little bit about his education. He holds a master's degree in climate change policy and economics from the Australian National University in Canberra, and is currently a senior policy researcher at the Yayasan Indonesia Cerah, a non-profit organization working to advance energy transition policy agenda in Indonesia. So without further ado, let's proceed with our first speaker, Ms. Ananda Putri. The floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Chaska. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. So yeah, as has been introduced by Mas Chaska, I am Ananda Putri, and please call me Putri. I have a background in public management and environmental engineering, and as also mentioned, I've been mostly work in environmental topics, especially the policy related topics. And actually, last year I have just completed the study in Germany in Potsdam University. So being with you today is like recalling my good memory when studying in Germany. All right, so thank you for having me. I'm really happy to learn together today with all of you. I would like to share about the green economy in ASEAN from the public policy perspective. So please wait my screen to be shared. Okay. All right. Before we talk deeply, I want to start by asking everyone about the green economy and its brothers and also its sisters. So at least until today, I have heard similar terms like low carbon development, and then green growth, sustainable economy, steady state economy, clean growth, and then zero carbon economy. So my question is, although they are similar with each other, do you think they are the same or are they different? Maybe for those who answer same, you can show thumbs up. And then if you say different, you can toss a heart in the chat box. So I repeat the thumbs up for same and then the heart for different. Okay. I can't really see the chat, so I assume there are answers already. All right. Maybe from the committee, could you please help me checking the chat? Are there any answers already?
Maybe reaction.
I'm sorry, to make it more clear, do you exactly refer to reacting to like
reacting.
through the webinar itself or through the chat, because those are different mechanisms, just to make it clear,
Oh, all
because,
right.
I feel like our participants have not fully understood yet. So yeah.
Okay, to make it more easy, yeah, let's use the create feature. Sorry, react feature.
Okay, all right. So just to make it more clear to the other participants, if it's okay with you, I'll repeat your question. So the question put forth by Putri here is that if you think that these terms in the slides are the same, that means the same thing, then you can react by having a thumbs up, putting a thumbs up reaction through the webinar feature. Or if you think that they mean different things, you can react with a heart instead. So yeah, please.
All right, I assume there are already some answers.
I think we're getting answers.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
few ones. Let's see. So I see some hearts and some thumbs up as well over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently, quite differing opinions. Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mas Jessica and everyone for your participation. So the answer actually could be the same, but also could be different. So no wrong answer. I will explain why. Here I take the explanation from the Green Economy Guidebook that was prepared by United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, or UNDESA. So we can explore why they are same but also different. And through this report, they picked 3 selected terminologies, as you can see: green economy, green growth, and low carbon development. And this report assessed various definitions and found out that there are no agreed definitions, at least until that date, that year, yeah. But it's very clear that green economy, green growth, and low carbon development, all of them are incorporating environmental protection besides pursuing economic and social development. All of them lead to the same goal, which is to achieve sustainable development. I reckon that many of you are familiar with sustainable development, which is a development that meets the needs of the present and also future generations. And nowadays, we can refer to the sustainable development goals to guide us in achieving the sustainable development itself. So the difference among various terms is not a problem practically, because essentially they lead to the same direction. And then now I invite you to deep dive a little bit into the green economy. So the discussion about green economy has been happening for many decades, actually. And the United Kingdom government was the one to first use it to shift their development direction into a more environmental friendly one. And then between 2008 and 2012, there was rapid growth in the global discussions of green economy, and we can find many reports talking about green economy. And until now, one of the most used definitions of the green economy is the one that we can see on the screen. That is one that results in improved human well-being and social equity, while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities. It is low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive. So guys, a green economy indicates that well-being and social equity could only be achieved only if we we include considerations of environmental or ecological perspectives in making development happens. Okay, now how about the green economy in the ASEAN? So a green economy has been integrated into the ASEAN cooperation since the 1980s. To be precise, when the ASEAN leaders founded the ministerial meeting on the environment, and then under the Bali Concord II in 2003, the ASEAN member states formed ASEAN Economic Community, Socio-Cultural Community, Political Security Community, to help improving the cooperation among member states. And then the 3 ASEAN communities have blueprints, and from the blueprints we can you can later visit the links here, by the way, and there are many statements that reflect ASEAN's commitment to green development. As we can see here, there are aims to implement renewable energy, green technology, sustainable tourism, climate change adaptation, marine ecosystem protection, and still many more. And then in 2015, the latest ASEAN Community Vision was issued, and it was explicitly mentioning a vision to form a sustainable community that promotes social development and environmental protection through effective mechanisms to meet the current and future needs of our people. And again, ASEAN advanced its policy related to green economy into 2021 with the issuance of the circular economy framework. This framework aims for resilient economy, resource efficiency, and also sustainable and inclusive growth. And so by applying a circular economy, what does it mean? It actually means that the ASEAN community optimizes the product values throughout the product life cycles, and then prevents waste as much as possible. And besides optimizing resources, the circular economy can lead to the reduction of greenhouse gases emissions, so that it helps member states to meet their targets under the Paris Agreement to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. So overall, in terms of green policy, ASEAN already has a comprehensive instrument, policy instrument, and has gained many positive improvements, which we will talk about soon. Yeah, I would like also to mention that under the ministerial meeting on environment in ASEAN, there are 7 environmental working groups inside ASEAN, and they are meant to facilitate cooperation within and outside ASEAN related to many topics such as nature and biodiversity conservation, water management, climate resilience, waste management, and so on, as we can see here. So it reflects the comprehensiveness of the current ASEAN political structure in terms of achieving a green economy and sustainable development. And then ASEAN also puts effort to cooperate with other countries or other regional dialogues outside the Southeast Asia region itself, which mostly in Asia and Europe. And we can also have here a deeper look at one sector. Here I choose the sustainable cities sector as the example of how far ASEAN member states have prepared and acted in terms of green economy policy implementation. There has been a master plan for ASEAN connectivity, and it's followed by a strategy for sustainable urbanization, transportation plan, and to make it work more efficiently, there is a working group on environmentally sustainable cities, and there is also a support from a green finance facility for the infrastructure projects. There are also many multilateral or bilateral cooperations with countries outside ASEAN, for example, with the German government. We can track some of the ASEAN achievement and plan related to the green economy in these reports. So since 1996, ASEAN Secretariat has regularly issued the ASEAN State of the Environment report. And then in 2021, it issued a State of Climate Change report. And from the two reports, we can learn about the progress of ASEAN to protect the environment and tackle climate change. And currently, all member states of ASEAN, there are 10 member states, have submitted their commitments to reduce emissions to the UN climate change, or usually set as UNFCCC. And interestingly, if we look at the climate change report and the joint statement on climate change at the 27th COP, ASEAN leaders have also put attention to climate change adaptation. It means ASEAN is aware not only of reducing emissions to prevent the temperature increase, but also of handling the ongoing impacts of climate change, such as climate-related disasters. So everyone, now in my place there is Azan, but I hope my voice is still easily understood by all of you. Okay, and now I want to share about how is the progress of green economy implementation in ASEAN. I take the data from a study result by Han et al. About the dynamic evaluation of green development level of ASEAN region and its spatio-temporal patterns. So in general, from 2010 until 2019, there had been positive and quite significant progress in terms of green economy implementation. If we look at the overall progress in the 10 countries, there was a more than 7% increase. And the study also assessed progress in the dimension of economic and social, resource utilization, and then environment and health. And if we investigate every dimension for the resources, resource efficiency, the progress is at 44% rate. But a low progress is happening for the economic and social development, which is around 5%, and environment and health development with around 1% progress. If we see here the progress of each member state, we can see that Brunei, Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines were above average in terms of overall green development status. But then here, if we see the improvement level, improvement means the change from 2010 until 2019, the story is a bit different. So we can see here that Brunei, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Laos, and Malaysia are the ones that made the highest improvement compared to the others. The difference in the progress speed or the change could be because of insufficient effort, but that is not the only thing, because it could be also because of different baseline or starting condition in every country in 2010. Okay, now I am really happy to share the success story in Indonesia related to the efforts to achieve a greener economy in the past few years, especially after 2019. So 4 years ago, the Indonesian government introduced an initiative, namely low carbon development, a paradigm shift towards a green economy in Indonesia. So the low carbon development strategy contains a baseline and also projection of emissions and also policies towards the new norms in terms of low carbon policy and also strategy. In establishing this policy, the Indonesian government applied system dynamics modeling that addresses interactions, which is very complex, the interactions between environmental carrying capacity, climate and economic variables, and some social variables as well. And then the modeling results emphasize that the environment is a buffer to economic continuity in the long term. So this shows, in other words, the advanced approach of the Indonesian government to shift the policymaker and public's perspectives to see the economy and environment. Because previously, many people believed that the economy and environment were competing with each other. But now, slowly but surely, many people and many policymakers start to believe that economy cannot go on in a long term without sufficient support from ecological components. And the other innovation that the government made was to put emission intensity measures. This is quite unique. So emission intensity is the carbon dioxide equivalent emission per unit of economic output, usually measured by gross domestic product or GDP. So what the government wants to imply here is that ensuring emission reduction is important, but measuring how efficiently the emissions are emitted is also very important to reflect the worth compared to the economic growth. And then just last year, the Indonesian government also launched Green Economy Index for the first time to measure and monitor the progress of development that incorporates economic, social, and ecological considerations. And last but not least, the Indonesian government also issued the Climate Resilience Development Policy. The report, you can see the cover of report here. And this policy is very strategic for Indonesia because as we know, Indonesia is the largest archipelago country in the world. So it is very vulnerable to climate risk, climate change impacts such as the sea level rise and other climatic disasters. All right, this is the end of my sharing session. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something from it. Thank you very much for listening and looking forward to discuss further in the Q&A session. Okay, back to you, Mas Jaska.
Thank you very much for the very insightful and information-filled presentation from you, Putri. It was great, and especially we've gained a lot of insights with regards to the basics, like what the green economy is, and of course the approaches that the general global community has taken in order to tackle climate change and so on, and also specifically more on the ASEAN approaches. So thank you very much. And for the next speaker, we move on to, maybe we'll change gears now, talking more about renewable energy, but more the specifics in that aspect. And now to explain us all that, we have Mahavira Dilan here that will tell us more about it. So yes, so please, you can start now.
Thank you, Jaska. Hello, everyone. So let me try and share my screen. I hope it's on screen. And okay, right. So I've been invited to talk about renewable energy and Asian sustainability. Thank you, Ananda Putri, for prefacing the need for green development and the green economy, right? And I think renewable energy plays a pivotal role in us transitioning towards such an economy. And hopefully I can draw some lessons, especially from our data set in Indonesia, about how Indonesia and ASEAN would do much better if we were to transition to a greener economy through renewables. Now, three main themes I will raise today is that, first and foremost, most of what we have considered as development have been funneled. So we have gained tunnel vision because of fossil fuels, and then I will show hopefully how transitioning is the way for the future, and then what can we do next. So when we are being funneled towards a certain direction, we have to stop and ask, which kind of future, what kind of future are we going to? Now, we will see here that Indonesia is one of the top 5 producers of coal. We export to various countries, but it is harrowing to see that we actually only hold 3.2% of global coal reserves. Not only that, we export 80% of it. So what this means is that most of the coal we produce is being sold, exported abroad, which might be fine to a certain extent if the money really went to developing Indonesia. Now, you could go around and look for more issues about how the money is being spent, how much taxes and duties are being levied towards the coal industry in Indonesia, as well as things about they call it the poverty premium. You will see when you go to coal producing states or coal producing areas within Indonesia that they are oftentimes the poorest regions in Indonesia. These are things we have to question. Now, not only that, that one's about poverty, but what I want to raise as well today is the fact that we don't actually have that much reserves. We say, we're proud to be a coal producing country. 50 years ago, we were an oil producing country, but for the last 20 years, we have been a net importer of oil. Now, imagine what would happen if we were to run out of our coal. Now, this is taking total reserves. Total reserves means it's also taking all and any coal reserves which are not economical. Currently, if we only look at our proven reserves, it will not last us beyond 2035 based on our this year's export. We are reaching about 800 million tons production this year. Now, it might not last, but you will see how the growth, the trend has been growing. And even this is a conservative estimate based on 400 million tons per year production. And for the last 5 years, we have been exceeding that number. So we will run out of our coal even faster. Now, this is the projection the good people at Dewan Energi Nasional has made for us. And it basically shows that by 2046, we have to stop exporting. So we can no longer call ourselves a coal exporter. And then by then we have to, if we were to meet our demand for energy, we will have to increase our consumption of it and our production beyond what is sustainable. Now, the same goes for oil. As you can see, we have been a net importer for a long time. And unless we do something about it, our appetite for it will only increase. And this means trouble, because as you know, the more we import, the more the less resilient we are to price shocks. And economic sustainability, economic resilience will also play into political stability. Again, we are importing quite a lot, but if somehow suddenly imports stop, we only have 9 years. And this is, again, our absolute reserves. So if we turn every cubic meter in Indonesia, even, even at home, even wherever there's a bit of oil, and we take it all out, we can only last for 9 years. And that is if usage plateaus by 2025 numbers. Now, we are talking about political sustainability, about economic sustainability. We have to take into account various views, various systems and theories, which shows how countries relate to each other. And there's the development model here. This is Rosto's development model. And you will see that usually the assumption is, when a country transitions from a traditional society, they will take off towards, better production. So usually agricultural economies will transform into industrial economies, which then transforms into service economies. But you will see how that is not possible for all countries, not because of their own limitations, but because of how they relate with each other. Now, these are the theories which talks about them. You will, I don't have the time to talk to you about all of it, but hopefully at least you will be interested enough to Google it. And there's the world systems theory, how it relates to globalization, Samir Amin's dependency theory, which basically says that, people seem to allude that developing countries are dependent on loans and funds from developed countries, but actually it's the other way around. If developed countries do not get cheap imports of materials and of workers, they can't last long. Now, this ties into issues about cultural hegemony, how cultures from modern, more developed countries are being exported, whereas and it usually swamps over our, more legacy, cultural legacy, and how it manufactures consent. It makes people just accept that they are being eroded or being stripped of their cultural identity. Now, let's talk about transitioning towards a renewable green economy through renewables. There are at least 4 main reasons why renewables are the way forward. First and foremost, renewables will never run out. Actually, it might, but when it runs out, the Earth might not be habitable anyway, so that won't be an issue. Renewables, secondly, it will increase our sovereignty. I will talk to you about how sovereignty is different from just security and self-sufficiency. Third, renewables are now already cheaper. It has been cheaper for the last 8 years at least. Previously, when they say that renewables are more expensive, it is true, but it has stopped being true for the last 8 years, especially since IEA, International Energy Agency, released their 2020 report showing that solar cells are, PV solar is the way to go for electricity generation. Besides that, renewables also create more jobs. And this ties into the last point, where renewables have the potential to induce better social sustainability. This is a description of Indonesia's renewable energy potential. So we are using really just, less than 2% of it right now. And this is ASEAN's energy potential as well. Even with current policies, the IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency, has shown that ASEAN might be able to produce up to 2/3, 66% of its demand for electricity by 2050 through renewables. But they also show that you could actually even go for 100% renewables, or at least 90% renewables, if we are if we speed up our transition, basically. Now, this is the case for Indonesia. We have made several models about showing how we can transition away. You will notice how somehow coal still plays quite a bit into it, and even coal derivatives with carbon capture and storage. But we promised to get 23% renewables by 2025, but it seems we're still a bit far away from it. Right now, we're producing about 14.6%. So I don't know how we can catch up, but 7% suddenly. If you notice, this is a funny graph. These are projections, and we've been slowly going up, but then we expected to have a sudden burst, which is fine. Sometimes we can catch up, but then we will have to ask the government about how serious it is in trying to get that done when the investments for renewables and fossil fuels, we're still investing so much more in fossil fuels, basically. Now, let's talk about security and sovereignty, right? More often than not, we say that a country is self-sufficient or secure in terms of energy or food, is that you are able to buy something when you need it, so you won't run out of food or fuel. However, this is significantly different to sovereignty, where sovereignty means that you can determine for yourself what you produce and what you consume. So, even when we are starving, but then we're able to buy some cheap noodles or whatever, that's called food security, which is not entirely healthy, especially if you have to go and keep buying, because then you are susceptible to price shocks. But when you are allowed to determine for yourself what you produce and what you consume, price shocks won't affect you as much. We have seen how the last few years, especially since the Russian invasion to Ukraine, there's been a significant spike in the price of oil, and this has screwed up a lot of things. Singapore has, wisely tried to shift away. They realize that they can't always rely on imported gas, but so not only are they pushing for more PV solar, they are also planning to buy more renewable energy all the way from Australia, and this ties into a potential macro grid or super grid amongst ASEAN countries, which might open up some can of worms, but also means that there is potential for better interconnectivity and trade, especially for energy. Now, renewables are also cheaper. Levelized cost of electricity is basically when you take all the requirements for a type of energy production technology, and then you compare it. So even in Indonesia, based on existing technology, you can see how at a utility level, renewables have become comparable to non-renewables. Now, if you compare this with the global data, you will see how after 2015, basically things have become cheaper. So you will notice that the issue with the application of technology is not just the cost of the technology itself, but usually there are direct or indirect barriers towards the application. So you will notice that in Indonesia, PLN is the single buyer, and then we can talk about that at length at some other time, or if someone is interested. But basically, there are barriers in the application of technology, which means that LCOE, is in general already cheaper, but applying it in Indonesia might need some structural changes. Again, just to show that globally, especially if we look into the future, renewables will consistently become cheaper. And then renewables create more jobs. Like for every $1 million of investment, renewables and energy efficiency will produce up to 3 times more jobs than fossil fuels. This goes to show as well, a more specific data from a country size is hard to find, but luckily for the US, there is some data on it. If you notice how for solar generation, that's 370,000. That's already much bigger than, so it's still smaller than oil and petroleum, but let's say it's the same as natural gas, right? What does this mean? This just means that, okay, the whole sector employs that much people. To put it into context, then we look at this graph. We see how natural gas is such a big part of the energy system, whereas renewables are clumped into one and very small, and yet solar only a part of renewables. And if you see that wind also generates quite a lot here, solar is already at par with natural gas. Now, what happens if we change all that section of of natural gas with renewables? That means we will create many, many more jobs. Now, as a good example from Indonesia, there's Gerakan Nasional 1 Juta Solar Atap, or the 1 million rooftop solar movement, and it has done a lot of good. It has increased quite a lot of people using it. That's still a small number, 2,300 rooftops. Not that great. I mean, compared to millions of people, we have 270 million people. Even if you divide it by 4, assuming it's a 4-unit household, that's still 80 million. Oh, sorry, yeah, about 70 million houses, and we've only covered 2,300. But even then, we've produced quite a lot of electricity with it, and we've reduced the electricity subsidy burden of the government, and we've created 30,000 jobs. This is another favorite of mine. There's a small NGO based in Bali called Copernic. They sell all these small solar-based devices, which can help you charge your phone battery or just be a backup light at night. And they also help people, use solar dryers on the top left, and then you can also run salted water through the solar panels as a way to desalinate it. So renewable energy technology allows you to be off-grid. It's modular, so you can scale it up as you need it. It's portable, and you could use it for many things. Now, there is an issue with just energy transition, being that more often than not, when you apply new technology, especially at a large scale, you forget to focus on the impacted communities. So there are calls for a focus on that, especially through JETP right now, which we are still handling and still discussing about the strategies to apply JETP in Indonesia. And what is important as well is the fact that we will need inclusive retraining for people currently working at the fossil fuel industry. But don't worry, that ILO data shows that a just transition will increase income for everyone. So there's a chance, not just at the state level, not just at the corporate level, but even at a personal level, to transition is a good thing. Then, when we do this together, when we make sure that the process is inclusive and regenerative, we arrive at this circular economy, this greener economy. So what next? Now, there are notes from Norway about how they avoided, they are rich in oil, but how did they avoid that oil being squandered for, just useless development, or how did they avoid the Dutch disease? So usually Dutch disease means when a country has lots of natural resources, those resources get exploited, but the country does not necessarily grow well. So how they did it is basically they ensured that they taxed it by quite a lot, and they ensured that the funds are really used for the people. Can you imagine that there's a sectoral tax for oil up to 56% on top of the 22% corporate tax? And Equinor, basically the state-owned enterprise for oil, the state owns 67% of it. So you could float it on an IPO, but you still need the state to have a controlling interest. And they utilize the funds through a state's direct financial interest lens. So most countries, when you want to explore natural resources, sometimes you just say, okay, whoever want to come, how much are you going to give as royalties? They do it in reverse. They do what is called a reverse auction. So, okay, how much can you give? How much are you willing to give? Not how low, but basically it's 100% the countries. So if you say you want to exploit it, how much can you give back? So, Indonesia and ASEAN in general, we are rich in mineral resources, coal, oil, and other resources at differing levels. But what we need to ensure is that we don't, fall for Dutch disease, that we need to make a sovereign wealth fund. And currently, when energy prices are soaring, especially for Indonesia and some other ASEAN countries which might be exporting energy, make a windfall tax, because windfall tax means these are just unearned extra income. So why not tax it? Then there's also a study showing how renewable energy, transitioning to renewable energy, aids in the post-COVID recovery. So we're still recovering. It's not too late. We can still do more. And there's a precedent. We have done this before. Back in the 70s, there was an oil crisis, and we did just basically tax more of the increased in profits. So we will not, bankrupt the corporations because they are just earning way more. For example, right now, coal is priced at about, I think, almost $300 a ton. Before the pandemic, it was 55. That's a six-fold increase. It reached 380, I think. So just taxing those increased profits, the companies will still run. Now, we've also established an Indonesian palm oil fund, BPDPKS. And when there was a sharp increase, Indonesia did make a windfall tax for palm oil. And even then, the increase for palm oil wasn't even twofold. It was just, I think, about 50%. So we could do it. Why not do it when it's a 600% increase? As for investment for renewable energy, you will be happy to see that they have a report showing just how big renewable energy investment has become in ASEAN. And the two biggest, 20 billion and 12 billion, these are the two biggest projects in ASEAN in 2021. And they're both, large photovoltaic and wind power plants. So those various investments, as well as Indonesia's JETP and Vietnam's JETP, basically shows that shifting investment is happening. People are investing to renewables. Let's get on the wagon and do something about it. Okay, to sum it all up, continued reliance on fossil fuels will do us no good. Both for Indonesia and other ASEAN member countries, we need to ascertain that we are using these fossil fuel and mineral resources that we have right now and manage it well. And then there's always space to, when you say you need fiscal space to enact policy changes, just apply extra taxes on mineral and natural resources, because those are one-time use. And if you don't ensure that you use it efficiently, you will squander that opportunity. Finally, ASEAN and Indonesia has tremendous renewable energy potential. Just, let's utilize the best of it. And it helps the fact that they are modular and off-grid. We don't need to take cables all the way to the remote areas. We can just ensure that, we build it there and they are self-sufficient. So that's all from me. Thank you very much, and Merdeka.
Thank you very much, Wira, for the very insightful and very detailed presentation on matters with regards to renewable energy. It's and yes, I mean, the points that have been delivered are well, some of it, well, a lot of it are actually very harrowing and very terrifying. For instance, just to summarize, like, the realities of our current mineral reserves and so on and so forth, with taking Indonesia as an example, and also revealing to us the great and sort of the great potentials that renewable energy has, and the sort of how it's actually not as scary as you might think, transitioning all this to this new renewable energy paradigm. Okay, and before we go on, I think we have someone who has raised their hand. I'll do here. So yes, I'll let you speak. Please, yes.
All right. Thank you, Chaska. Thank you, Maswira and Mbak Putri for the presentation. It was very insightful. And my question is, okay, let's say they were convinced that the green economy or the change into the renewable energy is the way to go. It's even the only way to go, probably. But as you mentioned before, Pak Wira, that there is a technological gap that has to be overcome. And I got a privilege to experience to hear from the ambassador, Pak Harif Afas Ogroseno himself, that Indonesia is rich on, he was talking about the production of photovoltaic or solar panel in Indonesia. And he mentioned that we are rich on silica, a very essential component in building a solar panel. But we are lacking the expertise to create one. And my question is, although that all of these scenarios are beautiful and seems like possible, how possible or how near is it to the reality? What type of cooperations do ASEAN or Indonesia especially need to actually apply these changes into a more renewable energy future? Because Germany itself, there has been a law that that has been discussed very heavily on the new law that that is going to implement more renewable sources for heaters, and there are lots of protests around it. Even for Germany as a country that is in the central of Europe, that has which is an industrialist country as well, but they are still having difficulties in actually implementing their own ideas, and the laws have to be adjusted into some extent until it seems feasible. How feasible is it for our country, and how do we actually profit from these plans to actually making it into reality? Thank you.
Yep. Just to make it clear, who are you directing this question towards, Aldo? Specifically, you can unmute.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
To Maswira.
To Maswira. Okay. Please, Maswira.
Okay. So here's the thing with renewables. Most of renewables are actually low technology. I mean, solar photovoltaic, basically you don't need to know how to make the silicon chips. Most of the chips are already pre-produced. You just need to know how to mount it, and that's a basic engineering problem. So in that sense, you will see that the data for America, for example, most of those jobs are for rather low-end manufacturing jobs, as well as for installation, as well as for basic repairs and just maintenance. So the technological gap that you mentioned might be the assumption that we want to start producing our own photovoltaic cells, which might be there, but there are always ways to invite technological firms to show that, hey, you can produce this here, because that's what China did about 20 years ago, well, 18 years ago probably, when they started overtaking Germany as the #1 producers for photovoltaics. Germany became the #1 producers in the late 90s, I think, but that was because there was a big push from Parliament as well to incentivize the development of these photovoltaic industry. So it's not that high technology right now. I mean, most photovoltaics on the market is still at about 15% efficiency, but don't be fooled. Like, this is 15% of free energy, basically. Lab-based ones have reached 45%, as far as I know, but it will be a long way from getting, 48% on the ground. But we don't need to. We don't need to aim for the highest efficiency. We just need to get it there, and manufacturing doesn't have to be a big deal, because most of the technology for 15% efficiency has been out there for a decade or so. So, yeah, I mean, again, most of these jobs will be good for everyone. Even people with a high school degree will be able to work as, repairman, maintenance, and mounting these photovoltaic cells. The same mostly goes for wind turbines as well. Of course, the other more exotic energy systems will require a higher education, but still, don't be afraid of the technology gap. It's not the technology gap that's hindering hindering renewable energy application in Indonesia. It's usually the institutional ones.
Thank you for the answer. And before we go on, I would just like to make our speakers also aware that you can comment on each other's materials as well. So that is, there's an open forum, so that is very much welcomed for Putri and Vira. And additionally, I guess I have a question towards the organizers, Rehan especially, on what's the allocated time that we have for the whole Q&A session.
So for the allocated time would be 20 minutes, but because we extended to be an open end because we have this networking session. So if the discussion is going great, we can extend to 30 minutes.
Okay, just to make it clear, we're not bounded by any sort of time restrictions then.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you. So I think I'll read out a question from the chat. I believe one of which has been answered by you, Vira, as well. So thank you. But we also have another question here to Miss Ananda. From Antonius Weskito. So the question would be, according to the comparison with Brunei Darussalam's high improvement against Indonesia, is there a well-known strategy used by Brunei that Indonesia can implement as well?
Yeah, thank you, Mas Chaska, and also Mas Antonius, for the question. This is very interesting. Me myself is still exploring why some of Asian countries are advancing related compared to others. To focus on Brunei, to be honest, I haven't really explored a single country because my understanding is the green economy in Indonesia, but in general, what makes Brunei, Singapore, and they are relatively small countries, why they are seems more easy to be successful in terms of green policy implementation is because they are relatively small and their equality level is relatively the same. I mean the equality in terms of economy of its population. And also the challenges compared to Indonesia, for example, is very different. If we think about Indonesia, it has a lot of, for example, islands and then coastal areas, and also a very big democracy, quite big inequality. So to make a green policy implemented, it takes like much more effort compared to much smaller countries. Well, I hope that can give hints of why Brunei and other smaller countries are relatively more successful.
Thank you very much for the answer. I hope for Antonius that satisfied your question as well. And additionally as well, I know that Mr. Vira, you've answered the question towards Antonius' question in the chat already, but I think just to make all of the participants in the forum aware of the interchange, perhaps you could explain maybe perhaps what you've explained in the chat to through verbally, just if that's not too forward, obviously.
Of course. Thank you very much. I think the first question then was from Krisma, and he asked whether they say that if we use renewable energy, we will need some some form or some sort of energy storage, and that it's not that 100% clean, which is true. Nothing is 100% clean. You will there are always issues, but there are ways to work around it depending on where you are. The least damaging way, especially if you already have a dam around the area is to use pump storage. So pump storage is basically when you already have a dam and you have a renewable energy turbine there, water turbine there to produce energy. What you can do is when you need the energy, you just let the water flow downwards. But then when you have excess energy from other sorts of renewable energy, let's say next to the dam, you have lots of solar photovoltaic or wind energy, you could use the excess to then pump up some of the water back to the dam. And then when you need it at night, you can let the dam go again. That's pump storage. So that's very efficient. And we actually have quite a lot of it. And it's a common use. Other forms of storage usually means battery storage, and battery storage always requires minerals, etc. But I mean, minerals mean mining. That's true. But if you compare it, we are being fair, then we could do a life cycle analysis depending on where you plan the project to be. But then if you were to make, like, for example, a coal power plant at the same area, how much mining and transportation of all the coal will be required? And there is a way to compare that, but what is up and coming as well is called thermal converters, and that might be even better because then you could use some other materials rather than just energy to store the excess energy and release it when you need it. But we haven't applied that in a grid scale yet, but in the near future you will see how it will be better than energy potentially. Better than batteries, I mean. As for the question for Antonius, the issues about applying renewable energy technology, as I said, it's not the technology itself, but usually it's institutional, so legal, formal barriers for it. Indonesia still directly or indirectly subsidizes its fossil industries. And so the analogy here is that the fossil industries have been there for years. Let's say, imagine Usain Bolt, world's fastest man, and we are running a race with a renewable energy company, which is just basically a baby. And not only that, Usain Bolt is starting 10 meters ahead. So of course it's hard for renewable energy industries to come into Indonesia. Now we need to change that, as well as the fact that PLN is the single buyer, and the way they plan and construct a lot of their power plants are done in a black box. So even our attempts to ask for open government data, etc., is thwarted because PLN is not the government per se; it's a company. So they retain some of that right to hide their data. But that is an issue about that we can overcome. At the very least, an easier way to do it, because lots of people then say that, okay, we can't have PLN as a single buyer, we need a free market for energy. There are also issues with that. I personally don't really agree with a totally free market. There's cases of Enron, but PLN right now does at least 3 roles. It's a planner, it's an oversight committee, as well as actually an executor of projects. So that's an issue. We could ensure that PLN's main mandate to ensure that we give energy to all Indonesians is there by letting it be the Overwatch committee for the whole energy system. But then we could allow for more other parties to play a more active role without them being able to control the Indonesian energy market and screw it up. So there are ways around that. At the very least, what a lot of people are also pushing for is a thing called reverse auctions. So reverse auctions, again, similar to the Norway case. Basically, PLN, instead of saying that, okay, we're going to build a coal plant here suddenly, but okay, we need a power plant of this size in Jember or somewhere, and then he could say, okay, we're taking all submissions from any type of energy. Show us that you can make it there, the type we want. How much is it going to cost? And the lowest cost wins. That's a reverse auction. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And to Antonius, the one that's asking the question, and Kisma, I hope that's makes it clear for you. And we've got a few more questions to go through still through the chats. Let me check. So Fabian Naisar Rahmat here has a question towards Mbak Putri. So in your opinion, how could ASEAN go about overcoming the potential resistance from vested interests within traditional sectors, such as non-renewables, that may hinder the transition towards the green economy? I guess it's a very relevant question. Yes. So please.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jessica and Ms. Fabian. Yeah, it is a very interesting question. I assume that what you meant by traditional sectors is informal sectors. So if that is the case, it is really true that in Indonesia, most of the economic sectors are dominated with informal sectors. If I'm not mistaken, more than 90%. Informal is, of course, a challenge, yeah, in terms of a lot of things like how to monitor informal sectors and so on. Compared to European Union, for example, in the EU, informal sectors is almost non-existent, but it is dominated with SMEs, with more 98% of SMEs in the EU economics. So although SMEs are a lot in EU, but they are all formal. It is a really different case with country like Indonesia and, for another example, India. But to make all informal to become formal, is that a solution? I think that would be a very interesting discussion, which I'm not sure what would be the great answer to that. But at least during the transition during the transition time, yeah, to decide whether we want to go 100 formal or not, I think it is really great to adopt some good examples from local practices in Indonesia. The first example is in Bantul Regency. So Bantul Regency is very strictly limiting the issuance of permit for certain kinds of businesses so that informal sectors can still grow without, can still grow well, and there is no issue of environmental destructions, because in the other side, they also have policy to preserve the environment. And another example is in Bali. If you ever heard about Banjar, I think it's similar with RT RW in Indonesia. So in every Banjar, they has they have unique regulations, yeah, to be implemented by the inhabitants. For example, to conserve the river water, and so on, and on how to build the construction, for example. So the economy can still going forward without compromising the bad environmental impacts. I hope that can answer your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Putri, for the answer. So before we go on, I've received a message to before we go on to the next set of questions, we'll have a small photo session, screenshot of the all participants here currently in this discussion. And also, I think Rehan, as the one of the organizers of this event, wants to put forth like a sort of like a feedback questionnaire, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, don't worry. The question, we will still have time to discuss. I mean, everything like it will be like more of a open-ended event today, but for documentation we need photo. So please open your camera so that we can take a photo together, just for, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds. So yeah. Okay, Dura, you can lead us on this photo thing. You can.
Oh, sure. Okay, all right then. First, okay, I will wait for some people to turn on their camera. Then, okay, all right. We have 2 slides. Then I will take a picture for the first slide first. Then 3, 2, 1. Okay, and for the second slide. Three, 2, 1. So, thank you, everyone.
Chaska, I think you're unmuted. If you say something, you cannot hear.
Yep, that's the photo session done, but hold on, the event is not over yet, so if you guys have anything more to discuss, it's still got plenty of time for that. So I think now we can move forward to, I think, a question from Agnia to both speakers, to both Mbak Putri and Mas Vira, about any good books to recommend to read about on sustainability, sustainable development, green growth, renewable energy, and green economy, especially in the context of the global south. So please. Any one of you can take turns. Whoever wants to start first, it's fine.
Asira, do you want to start? Because I'm still thinking.
Yeah, that's the thing as well, right? I mean, it's bad, but as you get older, you keep forgetting to read new books. So I have to be, I have to admit that my suggestion would be for people who like some, relatively light reading. You could learn, you could read about donut economics. I've read, snippets of it. It's pretty good. The last thing I've read that, even then I didn't read end to end, but it's good if you want to understand about systems modeling. It's Limits to Growth. That's like a almost 50-year-old book. But hey, if you like data science and systems modeling, go for that. But yeah, there are textbooks as well, especially for the global south. We have to admit that the knowledge generation of the global south is still lagging. So I hope you guys can pick up the pace later on. I mean, I apologize as well for not doing as much. But yeah, I mean, Donut Economics, it's a great book. I know people who've read it who love Kate Raworth, and it's a great way to see how, how we need to take care about the bounds, the limits to economic growth. Yeah.
Yeah, from myself, maybe I would recommend the book in front of me. So, it's not appearing, but the title is Talking to My Daughter About the Economy. The writer is Yanis Varoufakis. So this is about, explaining how the economy shifts since the ancient time until now, and then eventually economy finds its like intersections, to choose whether economy wants to grow very quickly, but very not good, or it wants to consider to run very sustainably. And it is very well written and easy to understand. I hope you're gonna like it.
Yeah, so would that be all from would that all be all the recommendations from Masira and Mbak Putri here?
I think I can write it on the chat so that everyone can read the title of the book.
Okay, great. That would be a great addition. So to move it on, there's also another question here from Aldo, a follow-up question, I think, to his previous question that has been asked to you, Maswira. So he mentioned that he personally sees that he said our potential, as I'm assuming Indonesia's potential as a PV producing country shouldn't be overseen, and he's asking whether don't you think that this aspect could be vital to our dependency on the energy economics in the future, and or making the transition more attractive? By putting this aside, are you suggesting that we could just buy the photovoltaics 100% from, for instance, China? And won't it have any possible dangers for ASEAN or Indonesia economically? Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Good question. I will never suggest 100% of anything willy-nilly, and I think we need to be firm but flexible. You know, those two words are not contradictory, in the sense that, here's the thing. As you know right now, or you might probably know, there's a thing called TKDN, tingkat komponen dalam negeri, which is how when you buy a car, how much of it has to be done or assembled or manufactured in Indonesia. Now, I think they've applied the 30% TKDN for solar cells in Indonesia, which I support the concept of TKDN, right? In general, I do, but making a firm regulation does not mean you have to say, okay, by 2025, in 2 years, every solar cell in Indonesia has to be 30% TKDN. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that you could be firm by saying, okay, we want 30% TKDN, but in 10 years, right? We start with 5%, and then we amp it up to 10% every 2 years. At 5% every 2 years. That will show a clear signal to the market that this is the direction we want to go, and yet allow the the actors to be flexible enough, because then people don't need to think, okay, I have to suddenly do 30% in 2 years, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean, right now we are buying quite a lot from China anyway, because they're the cheapest. They're not always the best, but the way I see it, when you open up the market, and again, I'm not one to always say that we need to open the market for everything, but right now, at the rate that we are going, we could still just buy the PV from China and or Germany or other manufacturers. But then as more demand comes in, as it is clear that Indonesia is transitioning, there becomes an incentive for local producers to make photovoltaic cells. And so we won't be 100% dependent to China or any other producer. Subsequently, you need to remember that most solar cells last for 25 years. I mean, as long as you maintain it. So the jobs are sustainable, because we will need people to keep on maintaining it. We will need to, change a few cells now and then for, some will get a damage or whatever. But, you install 1 megawatt of solar cells, you only need to change most of it in 20 years. So it's different compared to right now. We are dependent on oil imports. If oil imports suddenly stop, lots of our economy will just suddenly stop. Oh yeah, that applies to most other ASEAN countries as well. I mean, we could do it. ASEAN countries, you should know, again, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Philippines. Vietnam and Philippines especially is installing photovoltaic in a huge way, and they're mostly getting from China, I suspect. And yeah, their economy is still doing fine. I don't think they will suddenly have issues if war breaks out. They can't import photovoltaics is one thing, but the photovoltaics already there, already being installed, is already producing electricity.
Thank you very much for the answer. And I guess I also have a question for myself, and this is for Mbak Putri. I think you've shown in one of your slideshows in the materials that about some of the measures that Indonesia specifically has done, Indonesian government has done with regards to the shift towards green economy, and one of which would be the measurement of emission intensity measures, if I'm not mistaken. And my question is that I mean, it seems like it's a very good measure, because it measures CO2 emissions per unit of economic output. So it adds a new dimension to an otherwise, because we usually just merely see economic outputs based on GDP, and we don't really, these sort of externalities are not really taken into account. So my question is, how is this system integrated in planning the economy and managing industries in Indonesia by the Indonesian government? Like, how do they manage to sort of use this measure usefully in their governance, based on what you have seen or what you have observed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Chaska. Interesting again. It is I think we are lucky enough here for Indonesian. Now the government already have integrated planning and monitoring system that are operationed by the planning ministry and the finance ministry together, so that the planning of activities and the planning of costs can be done together. And there are nowadays also budget taking for certain topics, like for climate mitigation, and then for SDGs and so on. So the system is already there. The line ministries just need to propose their activities based on the guidance that is given by the planning and finance ministers. It seems simple, but in the implementation, I heard a lot of difficulties, but it gets better and better. And if I'm not mistaken, it has been started since 2019. So it's kind of new, but not that new anymore. So hopefully after a few more years of the system utilization, we can see the results.
All right, thank you very much, Mbak Putri. And I think additionally after this, I think Rehan has a few words to say or a few messages to say.
Yes. So the discussion, I mean, will still be going on, but I also have some quiz, because why would you want to join this quiz? Because at the end we will have some prize, and the prize would be the free entrance for our student summit in Frankfurt. So before we continue the discussion, but I think there are no questions on the chat. So maybe we can go first into the quiz, and also there are some feedback form. And why would you want to submit this? Because then you would get some certificate from us that you participated in this event. Okay, so I'll share my screen first, because we want to do some live quiz. And yeah, after that we can back here again. And for some of you that still interested, yeah, you can stay. Okay. So the link is already on the chat, the link for the quiz. Okay, I see some participants here. Whoops. Okay, we will start in 20 seconds.
Maybe some more time for the people to scan the QR code, maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can go with the QR code also.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can start now. So this is not like Kahoot where you were rewarded by your fast response. This is just if you could answer correctly. So, okay. I think everyone's here, so let's start.
We have 13 participants with Geraldus on the top on the first rank. Okay. Oh, cool. So we already had our winner, I guess. So Rayhan, have you took the picture, the screenshot?
I'm sorry, are we still waiting for something, or can we proceed back to the questions?
Okay. I guess we already have the winner. Basically, so from the leaderboards, we have Mr. Wira, Kia, and Chaska on the third place. And since the winner is Mr. Wira and Kia and Chaska, we will need your contact later on. So the committee will chat you right away. So basically, Chaska is so Kia is here. I can see her, and there is Mr. Vira there. as
Please don't count me. Please don't count me. Like, get the second,
teacher.
third, and fourth winner. Come on. That's the. I
Hmm.
was just, but please don't count me, man. I can't go there anyway. Like, it's for the students there.
Well, sure then. So
And additionally as well, I mean, as I'm the moderator, if it goes to the next person after me, I'm completely okay. I mean, I'm just, participating for fun. So yeah,
for fun.
just making it
True.
clear.
All right then. So we will contact the winner after the session has finished, and the next session will be started with our metaverse things. Rayhan, could you please share the link?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, we have the winners. So like I said, because this event is open-ended and actually there are no questions anymore. So we will proceed to the networking events if you wish, but it's not mandatory. And yeah, the networking event will be open for like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or something. Yeah. Wait, I'll share you the link.
Sure, you can put the link into the chat so people
Yeah.
can join.
Okay. Be aware that your CPU usage will be slightly higher if you.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but I've just saw in the chat here received I think there's another question from one of our participants, Gerardus. He is asking whether he can still ask a question in the meantime towards the
I mean, if there is still a question, I would not prohibit it. I mean, the main of this event is to ask as many questions as possible. I mean, everything's optional. So yeah.
Okay, so yes. Okay, so Gerardus, the floor is yours to ask the question.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I lost the game. It reminded me a lot of the Indonesian multiple choice exams, but yeah, it was great. Essay would have not been possible anyway. So I have a question regarding the challenge of applying the energy production from the supply side after the green economy transition, because the topics now which is discussed in the EU is highlighting the fact that the performance of wind and solar energy production are not always constant, and they have to somehow store the overflow of overflow of energy that they get somewhere, and to use that in the period where, for example, the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. So that's the heated debate now. Like the right side of the CDU would say, like, it's actually not possible. We're an industrial country. We cannot rely on merely, this storage mechanism, and we cannot also build further storages. But the green side said, like, otherwise. No, it's actually possible. Now we make it 50% of German energy supply is coming from renewable supplies, which comes from France, Norway, and other countries, which are then traded via this interconnected energy circuits, right, on their energy supply system. Now, my question would be then directed in the case of ASEAN, whether there is already this issue on the performance of the supply side of the power generation with the energy, green energy resource, renewable resources, if they have discussed about what is going to be like the disadvantages of transitioning directly into the green renewable sites. I don't know in Indonesia. I think in ASEAN, I think the case would be that the sun will always shine or not. I think it's not, no, because there would be like a rainy season. But we also have like the how do you say, geothermal power and stuff. And I don't know what has been like thought on this interchangeable or interconnection between the different supplies of energy possibilities. Yeah, so that would be like my question, and I think it's directed towards both of the speakers. Thank you.
Silakan Kak Ananda.
Yes, please. One of you can start answering the question.
I think it's the expertise of Mas Wira. So please, Mas Wira.
Okay, so it is somewhat true that there will be variability in the production of energy based on intermittent sources such as solar and wind. But when it's an engineering thing, right? When you plan for a power plant somewhere, you look at the average throughout the year, right? In Indonesia and ASEAN mostly has 24-hour, well, not 24, mostly has sun throughout the year. Even during rainy season, you will experience reduced output, but no, that doesn't mean zero. Same goes for wind. We have some especially windy areas. A lot of you might have heard of PLTB Sidrap, and you will be surprised to know that although it's touted by everyone and it's a good success story, it is productive, but we are currently only using like 30% of it, I think. This is not an issue by the power plant output itself, but by the nature of the dispatch from PLN. So 20 years ago, we could argue that it might have been somewhat needed, but even then, PLN has issued an agreement with power plant producers, usually coal-based, that the agreement is take or pay, which means that for a coal power plant, if it produces 1 megawatt, PLN has to take it, or even if they only take parts of it, or if they don't take it at all, they still have to pay for the whole generating capacity, because it was a way to guarantee that, hey, build the power plant there, we'll buy the energy for you, right? Because we always assume, again, the National Planning Committee seems to love to assume high numbers in terms of economic growth, which might not always be the case. Now, the silly part of it is that PLN is still making such agreements especially with fossil fuel companies today. Now, Sidrap is able to produce so much more energy, but agreements with renewable energy has always been based on dispatch. So renewable energy companies only get paid for the amount of electricity that PLN buys, no matter if it can produce more. And even then, there's a reduction in terms of calculations about, these are silly things that are not engineering things per se, but again, it's a political economy thing. So in general, we can produce, I think, about more than 400 gigawatts of power based on potential. Even if we were being really lenient and say that, okay, we can only use 20% of it, that's already still more than 100% of our installed capacity today. So it's different case in Germany, where Germany is a relatively small country and it has 4 seasons. And there are issues about it being able to access the elements compared to Indonesia and ASEAN. We still have so much potential from sea currents or ocean thermal energy conversion. There's still a lot of things we need to explore. So, and we have geothermal. Indonesia has had geothermal since the 1980s, and it's still running mostly fine. There was an explosion relatively recently, But I mean, it's not that explosions in oil rigs are unheard of either, right? There are always risks, but if we are serious about it, there's lots of things we can explore, and it's a different setting to Germany. And intermittency again is an engineering problem. It's not something we can't work around. And if we're being really honest about our potential and what we need in the future, most renewables can still do for all of ASEAN, all of Indonesia. For Germany, we might need to look at it more closely because Germany has a smaller land area available, or basically just even total area available to them compared to ASEAN and Indonesia. So it's a different situation. And these are one of the things that developed countries might be iffy about accepting, because then they will have to accept the fact that, hey, developing countries are actually ahead potentially. And once we really tap into our potential, we will overtake them in terms of development.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers. And do you have something to add?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, Mas Jaska, I want to add rather from a more macro perspective of renewable energy transition. So maybe later, Mas Vira, you can add as well. I've ever done small research for my paper, and I found that one of the main challenges in the longer term would be the scarcity of rare materials, for example, rare earth, for instance, to create the battery or the wind turbine components and so on. And currently, most of the critical or rare materials are located in China. We have some in Indonesia and other ASEAN countries, but in general, in the longer term, if the global supply chain is not well organized, we might also face a trade war of the critical materials to achieve renewable energy transition. So this is, I think, something that is very worth to contemplate about, for the future of green economy.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Putri and Mas Wira for answering the questions, and of course also for the whole insight that you have provided us. And yes, with this, we've concluded the part of this program about with regard to the talk. So thank you very much for our distinguished guests, for your insights, for your knowledge, and for the very fruitful discourse that you've provided. And for the next part, I'm handing it over to our Masters of Ceremony again, back to Rehan. So yes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chaska. Thank you, Putri and Vira, for very insightful talks today. And with this, I will officially close this event. Thank you also for all the participants for the discussion. There is a reason why I don't stop the question for so long, because discussion is very great, and I don't want to stop the discussion because it's a very lively discussion. And so after this, like I said, you can go to the networking event. I'll try to set up some kind of like a metaverse, a virtual town hall. But yeah, it's optional. And once again, thank you for your attendance and for the lively discussion that we have today. And don't forget to join us in our meeting, offline meeting in Frankfurt on the 1st July, because if we have great discussion today, I'm sure that we will also have a great discussion on offline meeting, and to also answer the question that you may have but not been able to question today. Okay, that's all from me and from the team. Thank you and see ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And sorry for
Thank you so much, everyone.
prolonged meeting. Thank you.
Aduh, ya, sudah. Ya.
Sorry banget, 15 menit terakhir internet gue parah banget.
Enggak.
6 Mbps, 6.
Bisa turun. Jebol.
Enggak, tadi tuh ya kok
Ini udah keluar semua.
Udah kan ya?
Hah?
Rian.
Rian.
Udah.
Hah?
Udah.
Udah.
Aduh,
Jadi Dimas, orang kita semua.
aku tuh sebenarnya lagi ada meeting juga, tapi bisa-bisa bareng kok.
Bentar.
Bahaya pakai kamera ya kalau nggak ngedrop.
Oke. Nah, sekarang baru udah.
Nah,
Ya, tadi tuh bagus, keren banget. Tapi tolong nanti lain kali kalau ada narasumber ditanya dulu dianya bisa apa enggak jawab pertanyaan sampai lebih dari jam 3. Karena kan kita nggak tahu ya. Tadi aku sebenarnya mau ngomong juga, aku ngomong ke Caska akhirnya tadi. Tapi terus yang lainnya juga Gerald juga sih. Gerald juga lagi bareng Caska. Jadi kayak agak nggak efektif juga karena ya dia juga bingung gitu. Jadi kalau bisa nanti lain kali kalau ada pertanyaan tambahan tuh ditanya dulu narasumbernya.
Siap.
Tuh. Tapi sound udah keren banget. Maksudnya orang-orangnya juga pada aktif gitu. Bagus.
Halo teman-teman semuanya.
Hai.
Yolo. Ini ya, tadi aku kira jam 3 tadi udah kelar.
Iya.
Maksudnya udah kelar jam 3, cuman banyak discussion aja. Terus ya.
Iya, tadi aku juga nyalain on cam. Tadi kan 2 webinar side by side kan, lihat kanan lihat kiri gitu. Terus cuma tadi yang PDK ada kendala, jadi kayak kelar itu baru kesini. Tapi tadi kayaknya engaging banget ya, kayak
Iya.
partisipan saya ngeliat chatnya nih kayak buset.
Rame.
Ya, dan kayak gue sebenarnya tadi pengen ngasih Q&A kayak 10 menit aja kan. Terus kayak tadi tuh yang si Wira itu harusnya dia slide-nya itu kepanjangan kan.
Cuman 45 slide.
47.
Udah kayak Forlesung, bro.
Iya, cuman masalahnya itu bagus banget. So, gue
nggak bisa ditolak juga ya.
Kayak 47 bisa cukup kan 30 menit.
Iya, so nggak mungkin kan. Cuman gue ngerasa juga kalau gue jadi, karena ini kan topiknya memang bukan topik anak-anak yang mudah ya, maksudnya topik green economy dan lain-lain. Jadi kayak ya udahlah biarin aja. Gue memang karena ini penting dan pertanyaannya juga pertanyaan-pertanyaan kualitas banget. Jadi kayak ya udah.
Bagus pertanyaannya, engaging.
Ya itu Han tetap harus ditanyain walaupun itu
salah sih, salah gue.
Iya, maksudnya mereka juga pasti mungkin kemungkinan besar juga sebenarnya mau stay gitu.
Iya.
Bahkan mungkin sampai sejam lagi mungkin mau gitu, tapi kalau nggak ditanya tuh jadi kayak lah gitu loh.
Iya,
kenapa nggak ditanya gitu loh.
Iya.
Nggak apa-apa, maksudnya buat notes next time aja. Nanti mungkin yang punya kontak person narasumber bilang aja tadi makasih. Maksudnya udah mau stay lebih lanjut dan minta maaf.
Gue sih udah langsung ngomong personal ke narasumbernya sih. Kayak sorry ini bakal running late lama. Gini karena engaging.
Oke.
Udah ngomong sih.
Siap. Mantap.
Well, pada mau nyobain metaverse-nya kan?
Nggak ada juga itu, cuma kayak ya udahlah udah amat.
Agnia, mau nanya dong. Mungkin bareng nih terkait ini kemarin Jennifer nanya aku, jadi siapa yang baiknya yang opening sama closing remarks ya besok?
Oh, katanya openingnya jadinya ini Pak Acep nggak ada kan?
Pak Acep opening.
Oh iya Pak Acep opening benar. Closing Dim menurut lu kan jadi Pak Acep tuh bisanya opening, dia nggak bisa closing. Apa Dimi mau di closing apa mendingin gimana? Jadi opening tuh kita ada Pak Acep, Profesor Graf dari Gute, siapa lagi?
Gak tahu sih. Nah ini Klaus ini apa aku tanya dulu apa aku langsung kayak sodorin baiknya? Apa aku kayak tanya prefer mana dia, opening apa closing? Apa aku sodorin mau nggak opening atau mau nggak closing?
Berarti tergantung Dimi aja, Dimi mau opening atau closing biar. Tapi sebenarnya closing jangan jangan si close sih. Closing jangan si close karena kan cuma satu kan closing. Maksudnya karena kalau kayak gitu kesannya dia kayak lebih penting lagi karena maksudnya gimana ya kayak one and only di closing gitu jadinya. Kalau mau sekalian di opening juga, jadi Dimi yang terakhir mungkin kalau mau.
Boleh, gue ngikut teman-teman Haya aja.
Oke. Boleh sih. Misalnya aku juga kemarin mikirnya kayak since kan nanti terakhir ibaratnya mungkin kayak ya dari student gitu. Maksudnya kayak dari perwakilan student gitu lah yang menutup acaranya gitu.
Boleh. Aku jadi
Yang penting nanti MC-nya cukup banyak ngejelasin juga aja, maksudnya apa ya? Kayak ada narasinya juga, nggak cuma kayak oke, please welcome sambutan A, sambutan B, sambutan C gitu. Jangan. Jadi ada narasinya dikit biar kayak itu sambutan dari kita juga gitu. Maksudnya kita menyambut mereka guest dan lain-lain gitu.
Ini masih tayang live di YouTube ah?
Nggak tahu.
Dura ini masih